Hi, folks. Welcome, welcome. I'm 6 feet away from people. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my mask off if you don't mind. So, my name is Mark Wazalewski. I'm the chairman of the board for the Weathersfield Academy for the Arts. They've asked me to give a brief introduction and to be brief, so I'll do that. Welcome. Welcome, and thank you so much for supporting the arts in what is otherwise a very challenging time for all of us. As you will see, the artwork from the artists that entered into the show is very high quality. It's in keeping with the standards and the spirit of the Weathersfield Academy for the Arts that Douglas and Virginia Buck set 15 years ago when they created the Academy. And they couldn't be here tonight, but if you have the chance at some point, I encourage you to grab one of us who are affiliated and to go and take a look at the barns right there on Hartford Avenue where the Academy is located. I want to thank you so much for coming out tonight, supporting the Academy and the artists. I want to thank you for helping to keep art alive during this pandemic. And we had originally planned a much bigger affair. We had sort of plans for a large tent and a yard, and we were going to hopefully have, 100, 200 people. But obviously it didn't work out, and that's okay. You'll notice tonight that we heavily scaled down the event. We have a limited number of people. We have a lot of plasticware. We're taking safety precautions. And so we're doing social distancing. We've taken temperatures. What we've done is we've adapted this event and we've made it safe, but we have decided not to cancel. We've decided to go forward with the event. Well, we think that was very important. We've scaled down most of what we've done here, but what we've also committed to is keeping the prize money at the same levels for the winners, because we think that whatever time period we're in, that we should support artists and support great art and support everything that goes into our mission at the Academy, which is educating people, which is allowing artists to perfect their work and to keep working and to find places to exhibit their work and to show what they've done, and also for people to experience it. And that includes us, and that includes everyone who ends up going to Circa on Main and taking a look at the fine artwork that's going to be up for the next 2 weeks. Besides everyone here, I want to thank Peter Trippi, who is the editor of Fine Art Connoisseur. He's going to give a speech in a minute, and he has been an art museum director, author, curator, podcaster. He judged the art, and most importantly, a while ago, he made a commitment to this event, and he's one of the reasons that we decided to go forward with it. He's kind of a big deal, but he believes in the Academy, and he believes in small academies and schools like us, so we appreciate that, Peter. Thank you. I want to also thank the artists, our sponsors, Betty Standish, who is our director and who organized this event and rallied our troops, and our working board. Our board of directors really worked hard to put this together, along with the Keeney and the Weathersfield Historic Commission. Yeah. What? Yes. So I want to thank everyone who's involved with this, and without much further ado, I want to introduce Betty Standish.
All right, so I think I'm going to take mine off too, my bling off. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being brave enough to come inside for this event tonight. I know some of you had trepidations about this, but this is special and it's unique. Kudos for stepping out, and maybe Peter can speak to that a little later. Mark's naming of this event as Keep Art Alive speaks to the tenacity of artists to persevere. Can you hear me okay? Okay. For the public to know that there is value in supporting artists by buying their work. The action of making art should reflect the core of our time, culture, and relationships. There are so many stories to tell, but tonight I want to especially dedicate this evening in memory of Jim Smola. Can you change that? I had known Jim maybe 25 years, having hired him to do illustrations for my business, which were always spot on. And I'll show you in a second. Yeah, this is one of Jim's. He was able to understand big concepts, to bring the details. He had also entered our competition. I'll show you some of these. Let me see if I could forward these through. Oh, I'm going backwards here. Sorry. Here. He had an excellent sense of perspective. He went to school at Payer College of Art. That's Jim. Okay, sorry. He went to Payer College of Art, and he started out doing these black and white things for us. He didn't do this for me, but this is an example of what it is that he could do. His perspective was amazing because he was taught the traditional way of 1 and 2 point perspective. 5 years ago, he won an award during one of our competitions for best drawing. The drawing was slightly somber to me at the time, but I was not the judge. This year, it was timely that a workshop in understanding perspective take place, so I asked Jim to teach this, and he did in February. It was very much a success as a room full of students asked for a part 2. We were planning that for the fall. In April, I received an email from his wife, Susan, letting me know that Jim had suffered from depression most of his life, and he was no longer with us. The only right thing to do in this crazy year was to dedicate this evening to Jim. I just want to invite Sue Smola, his wife, to say a few words on behalf of herself and their 3 sons who are with us tonight.
Hello. Ever since Jim was a child, he wanted to be an artist. He told me that art was the only subject that encouraged him to stay in school. He loved everything there was to love about art and could talk about it for hours. He was gifted, professional, and a nationally published illustrator and award-winning pastel artist. My husband Jim, my soulmate, was a quiet, kind, and good man. His tragic passing on April 6 is a tremendous loss to his family, friends, and all who saw the beauty and creativeness in his work. He was truly an artist. On behalf of our sons, Peter, Jason, and Zach, and myself, we would like to thank Betty Standish and the Wethersfield Academy for the Arts, and you all for recognizing Jim tonight. We know he is beaming from above. Thank you.
Okay, hi everybody. Well, these are strange times, and I want to underscore something that Mark said earlier, which is thank you for being here. It would be a lot easier for everybody just to stay home and watch this on Zoom, but I think being together in person is very powerful, and you have voted with your feet being here, and I think we're all safe and happy and celebrating something really positive, and I want to say thank you, of course, to Betty and Mark and the whole team. And I also want to send my condolences to the Smola family. I'm very sorry, of course, and I really am going to learn more about this amazing man, Jim Smola. What an incredible gift he had. So thank you for your remarks. I'm going to be very brief, I promise. My goal is to bring you up to date with what's going on in the world of contemporary realist art. From my perspective, I live in New York City. I drove down up today, and I'm going back tonight, and I love Central Connecticut, and I will be back to see more of Wethersfield, which is an amazing place. I've gone a lot to Berlin and New Britain and Kensington and Hartford, but not to Wethersfield, so thank you for inviting me. It's incredible to see what the Academy has become. Betty took me over today, and I want to congratulate everyone involved with it for doing what you do. It's exactly the kind of thing I love. So it just makes me happy to be in a place like that. Bravo. The goal today then would be to put this into context. Where does this all fit in? Because you're doing some good work, and how does it tie into what else is happening in the country? I want to point out that everything I'm about to say is going to be perhaps different or changed by this pandemic. We don't know where this is all going to land next year when we have a vaccine and we're moving on with our lives. So please forgive me if these sound like predictions that don't actually come true, but this is all valid as of March 1st, 2020, when we were last living normal lives. Now, here's the good news. Thanks to Wethersfield Academy for the Arts and ateliers and academies like it, we are seeing ever-increasing technical skills among realist artists of all ages. And I want to stress the all ages part, that it's fabulous to see young people as young as 15, 13, doing great work and interested in learning these skills. This is a real thing, and it's happened from the ground up, not from the top down. And Wethersfield Academy for the Arts is a reminder of that. It's about communities and people just rolling up their sleeves and doing the work. The fact is that you and other organizations are out there with more students in more communities nationwide. I travel a lot normally, pre-pandemic, and I see places like this everywhere. There is no state without some entity like this, and that's cool because it means that it's universal, that people want this, they miss it in the university art departments that they used to go to. It's a real threat. What you're doing is a huge threat to university art departments because you're competing for the same students and you're offering great value at a much lower cost. Now, there's also the idea of growing visibility for what we make in the art world, quote marks around that. There are galleries and museums and magazines like mine and nonprofit groups and so on. That's good, that there is an audience for this and these entities are happy to present what we do. One example would be this ARC, Art Renewal Center. If you haven't looked at artrenewal.org, please do. It's a great nonprofit organization that champions a lot of our activities. The idea is that there is demand, but it's very spotty and it's very sporadic and it's not published widely in the New York Times on the front of the art page, and that's a problem. We have great leaders in our field. We have hugely successful individual artists, all in this case under the age of 40, who are making great work. And the artists in the room know who these folks are. I won't read their names, but you can see them right here. There are plenty of others of this ilk who are literally making $500,000 a year because they're selling great realist art. Now, in this case, they've sort of figured out the recipe. They have a subject matter or a style or a personality that resonates with a group of collectors or museum curators who want what they do, and that's great. And we want more of them, please. We also have these cool people in the cutting-edge contemporary world who touch upon what we do. I'm showing you some faces here. These are celebrities, household names in art news and Art in America magazines. The two in the middle have done portraits of the Obamas. I mean, big success, like millionaires. These are not just $500,000 a year. But I'm not trying to measure it in money. I'm just saying that they are taken very seriously and they are working with techniques that we respect. You may not love the imagery because it's to this or to that, but the fact is they know what they're doing when they get to the easel. So we have them to look to as well as, if you will, role models providing a kind of roadmap to bigger attention. And we also have internal connections among each other. Obviously, I mentioned Art Renewal Center before as a place where people go to find ateliers to study at, like yours. There's Facebook and Instagram and blogs and, my magazine, and we have a newsletter called Realism Today, which is free. That's all very nice that we can talk to each other. The internet has changed everything because we do not rely upon the traditional universities and art schools as the place to check in. We also can talk directly to other people who make art that we admire and find out where they studied. And of course, there's also the idea of younger people. I mentioned that earlier, that this is not an old person's game. Older people may love realism, but there are lots of youngsters who do too. And there are various reasons for that. It might be, the internet has lots of JPEGs of real things and they go for that. Also, maybe they're bored with abstraction or conceptualism and they want to see someone achieve something with their pencil or their brush that is well made. That's actually tying in with the whole craft thing. lots of young people making their own whatever, knitting, drawing, that sort of goes hand in hand. And we also have galleries across the country that are selling this stuff. Now, galleries are troubled since the pandemic began because all retail has been pushed right off a cliff. This is hard. If you're running an art gallery or any kind of shop or store, you've got yourself a problem because online has swept in, and it's a little difficult to buy art online with the same comfort and pleasure that we do in a gallery. So this is slightly pandemic qualified. But nonetheless, there are dealers out there who get it and want to support what we do. In general, things are great for our kind of art in the last 15 years. They've really gone uphill in a good way, and we should be proud of that, and Wethersfield is definitely part of that journey. But there are threats, and we have to be frank about them, because otherwise we're going to just twist in the wind based on the economy or whatever. First of all, I'm speaking very candidly to you. There's a lot of junk out there in realism. There are fairs filled with rubbish that is looking great in a hotel room, but really is not well-made art. And we have to be sure that we don't get confused with that. This is mass-produced, often in China, material that is called realism because it shows something real, something representational. That's all very nice, but it's not what you do. It is not handmade, and it is not a fair competitor. But by the way, it's a lot cheaper because it's mass-produced, and that's a worry. We also have a lot of great works entering a marketplace that can't get them sold. That worries us too. It's not just that galleries are struggling because all retail and storefronts are struggling, but there's just a lot being made. And where do we actually put this? Because the public, the middle class that buys art, may not know that we are doing what we do because we're not in the media as much as we would like or should be. And that's something I'll come back to in a minute. We also have the worry about good, better, best. Let's face it, that people are not as discerning as they used to be about all sorts of things. And it is tricky to explain quickly to a successful banker or lawyer or doctor or accountant or truck driver, what is good about this work of art? How is it well drawn? How is it reflecting great perspective? That's a challenge, and that is not delivered, unfortunately, in a lot of schools anymore in the art classes that kids take, if they even get to take them at all. A lot of that has been pushed out of the curriculum for various reasons. And so we're struggling against that because that crap from the hotel world, from the big fair in Las Vegas, looks enough like your art so that Joe Blow might not know the difference. Yours is 3 times the price. It should be, because you made it by hand with love. And that other stuff was just churned out in a factory in China. So we have to help people see good, better, best. And that is an educational project for all of us. Now, this is all, as I said, tied into schooling primarily. There are a lot of things I could talk about with the educational system in this country, but also shorter attention spans. We have to be honest, the internet has made us addled. And that is going to only get worse as more younger people who are digital natives come into the marketplace, that they are simply distracted because that's how they live. And that can be a problem for some artworks that reward close looking. Close looking is not something we do well in this world anymore, and we have to work against that and slow people down. I think the pandemic may help with that, because I'm not sure this society is going to get back on the horse like it did, after the Great Recession of 2008. I think we have some rethinking going on in this country about balance in our lives. And that is something that we should seize on and keep an eye on generally. I'm not trying to be political. I'm just saying this is a real wake-up call to a lot of us that maybe that fast pace was not necessary. The other piece would be the internet as our ally. It lets us talk to each other and learn about each other, but it's also a flattening effect. If your artwork doesn't look good in a JPEG, you've got yourself a problem. And a lot of artists know that, but what do they do about it? Sculpture is especially vulnerable to that because you have to take it from multiple angles. The photograph, that is, of the sculpture. The middle class is shrinking, let's face it, and so there is always that worry about that audience as a major consumer of our stuff. I mean, wealthy people absolutely love very often what we do, but that's a fairly small range. We want middle class people to buy beautiful things for their homes. and they are worried perhaps about what's going on in their lives financially, and it sort of keeps their discretionary spending small. Also, we have the issue of younger people not collecting stuff. There is a real concern in the world of retailers that young people don't want a lot of stuff. They want to be flexible and nimble. They want to be able to move to Singapore next weekend to take a new job, or to go hiking in the Andes, or they don't believe in stuff because it's un-eco-friendly. Those are all valid points. I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of that, but that's a problem for an artist who's selling a painting, because you want that to go into their home and inspire them. So this is something we have to keep an eye on, but we can't legislate. We can't tell people what to do with their money. We also are mindful of the challenge of retail, as I said before. It's very hard to run a gallery because people are going to, look online or buy it directly from the artist. It's all about rent and staff and insurance and running the bathroom. All of that is a challenge for a dealer. And I totally applaud anybody who is still selling art and antiques on the street. That's really very impressive, and we back them at our magazine. The challenge of getting through the crowded internet environment, it's not easy. No matter how great your website, how do you get people there? Because they're so busy looking at other things. And that's why we need to collaborate. The Wethersfield Academy collaborates with Art Renewal Center and other places so that you get into these other systems. That is a very smart way to live life generally, to be collegial with each other. And we also have the fact that our art is very often not at those record-breaking levels when it comes to auction prices. I'm picking on poor Jeff Koons here as an example of, the $50 million artwork. What does that even mean, right? It's a global investment asset. It is not really a work of art. It's a balloon dog that means the same thing everywhere in the world. We live in a global world where people don't want the sense of place, which comes back to the exhibition down the street, something local, something regional, something personal. They want something that is universal, timeless, and easily brandable, like a balloon dog. So that's a challenge that we have to think about. We shouldn't change who we are and what we make as a result of this, but we need to know that this is out there sucking up a lot of air in the world. We also have the issue of the mega rich who are interested in those contemporary works as investment assets. That, there's a whole Wall Street gang that really buy art because it's cool and also it can be flipped. And that's not generally the case with realism. There certainly are exceptions. I mean, certainly the artists that I showed you before, like Kehinde Wiley, amazing. And that has become very fashionable and very valuable. So it's not only true of more conceptual art, but it is a factor in the background. The idea of the cool kids, the museums are very much oriented more and more toward contemporary cutting edge because it is chic or interesting or shocking, whatever. I'm not anti-new, believe me. I think that it's very important that we support new cutting edge work, but we have to recognize that sometimes it's not actually that interesting or that well made. And I would argue that realism needs to be in the mix because that reflects what's going on too. And that is not often seen. I'm picking on these curators here from the Whitney who are organizing the next biennial. They're very nice people, but they're kind of, stuck in this hamster wheel of fashionability. The other problem is that we don't really have a brand. What is the word that we want to use to describe the art we're making? Apple is the most famous logo in the world. You see that image, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's a brand, and we need that to a certain extent to help people in the elevator as we're speaking quickly to them understand what it is we do and what we love. So here we are. What do we call the work that's being made at Wethersfield Academy for the Arts? Is it realist? Is it representational, figurative, traditional, classical, naturalist, narrative? It's hard to find that word or words that are going to nail what you do. Now, as artists, we love to be different and distinctive and independent, but that only gets you so far. That could end up, very badly for you. So we have to kind of think together about which of these words we want to put out in front. And I personally think modern realism is helpful because modern rings like our time, and realism is kind of what we do. But that's just my opinion. So we're overlooked in the shock world, the spectacle world, bigger and scarier and more expensive and so on. That's out there looming, but we just have to stick to our guns. And the whole business of the global, that we are talking about our place, whether it's Connecticut or New England or the United States, as opposed to something global like a balloon dog. And then, the other thing that, are we perceived as modern enough? Is there some anxiety among certain people that a beautifully painted sunset or still life is old school? Why are you still doing that? Didn't Rembrandt do that? Why do we need that again? And my answer to that is, well, as a matter of fact, I don't usually turn my back on a gorgeous sunset when I'm walking along Riverside Drive or Key West. I want to enjoy it again. Oh, and by the way, I like to go to the orchestra to hear a Mozart piece played again, afresh, because every performance is different. We shouldn't take that as a finished, old news kind of thing. That's my retort to the people who feel that we're being fuddy-duddy. The other question of, also, I don't think most Americans get the cutting edge stuff, the shock art. I don't think that they really respond to it, but they're afraid to admit that they don't get it, that it's somehow uncool to be asking questions like, why is that expensive? It's so badly made, or it's a stupid idea. I would rather buy a still life or a landscape or a narrative picture. People are timid about that because they don't have the vocabulary from their schooling or their social networks. So, what can we do about this? Let's talk about the positives for a minute. Authenticity. You are authentic artists. This is tapping into the organic, the handmade, and the artisanal. That is of our time. I think younger people especially get this. You are not mass-produced. You are not necessarily interested in global selling. You want to serve your community or your region. And that is very healthy as far as younger people are concerned. Mindfulness, slowing down, rethinking. That's what's going on perhaps this year in our country. And actually, that's very cool anyway. There are a lot of people doing yoga and breathing exercises, and that slows them down. And they should be looking at our art, which rewards closer looking, to respect the technique that you have achieved. Going beyond the mere skill. Let's be honest. You've got to learn how to do it first. Like a musician who is taught piano, you got those notes. You know how to play the basics. Then what is it you have to say? What is special about this art that makes the art look different from anyone else's still life or landscape? Only you can answer that question. And we need you to speak up as a unique individual and not look like everybody else. Ateliers and academies are a little tricky because, at that learning level, all the works kind of look alike. And that's okay, but then the individual needs to blossom when he or she leaves the academy and do what is unique to him or her. And that is what we want to support. We at the magazine, hopefully here in the community, we want people to tell us what's on their mind, show us who they are. So, all the backstories. We want to know who you are, what is this about, how did it get made, highlight the younger people because they often have very interesting, inspiring stories about how they stumbled into this. How is it that so young a person works with such old materials? That's a kind of sit up and notice thing. And also, there is a kind of hipness to what we do if you look at it from another angle, that it isn't oldie-worldy. It's actually kind of surprising that folks are still doing this, and let's talk about why. So, just a few examples. Graydon Parrish, a friend of mine in Texas, you probably know his major work at the New Britain Museum of American Art about 9/11. Obviously his answer to this challenge was to make something spectacular that no one had ever seen before, to have two men standing in for the Twin Towers at World Trade Center. That is remarkable, but we can't all afford to do that. He spent 3 or 4 years on it. That's a real challenge. What about cash prizes? Should we encourage wealthy people that we know to create initiatives that create essentially competition in a very healthy way to have people submit works of art, which are then considered by a jury and then are shown in museums? I'm showing you here Stephen and Elaine from Chicago, who are marvelous people who've created this initiative that is focused on women artists. They saw that women artists were not getting as much airtime as they deserve, and so they created this prize, and the works of art travel from one museum to another with funding from their foundation. This can be easily replicated across the country in any area. Still life, portrait, figure, drawing, men, women, animals. I mean, take your pick. It's not that hard, and it's really not that much money for a millionaire. So we want to encourage people to try that program, or even on a smaller level in a community. Why not? These are the categories to consider. They're all available, and there's no harm in having 2 prizes in each category. Absolutely fine. I think that's a really important goal because competition focuses the mind. The artist submits the best work possible, and the public loves a winner. They want to know who won. That's normal. That's why we have the Oscars, right? So let's go ahead and piggyback on that impulse in human nature. The question would be, do the patrons have the bandwidth to manage initiatives like this? We need to help them do that. We need to encourage them, give them the idea, and then make it happen through a local foundation or a local arts agency. It's all possible. Television exposure never hurts. I mean, talk about a competition. Who would imagine 5 years ago that we would be watching British people bake, right? I mean, the French are like, what the hell? Because the British are not the best bakers in Europe, but this thing is a phenomenon. So, okay, steal a page from their notebook, right? Internet. Never, ever ignore the internet. Use every aspect of it if possible, because so many people are coming to what we do through it, and that's just fine. I publish an old-fashioned paper magazine. We're doing great during the pandemic because everybody's bored and they're reading it at home, but we know that this is an old-fashioned dinosaur kind of communications outlet. Eventually, it will die and go entirely online. It's okay. Get real collectors out to talk about why they collect. We are surrounded by people we know and love who buy our kind of art and are embarrassed to talk about it. They don't want to look rich. They don't want to look ignorant about the cutting edge stuff at the Wadsworth Atheneum. Nonsense. This is just a lovely couple from Richmond, Virginia. Every year in the spring, I do 10 profiles of real people with their photographs and names and say, what do you buy? And they tell us about all these marvelous artists who are not famous, who are not expensive. And it's just a joy because these are role models. And every community has them. So let's celebrate them. They're doing it because they love it, not because they want to be cool. But they really should be applauded. And, get those folks onto the boards of museums. That's an important way to influence the conversation. Curators and directors listen to their trustees. And it's not about being sneaky, it's about being enthusiastic. If you really believe in the artists you collect, you'll champion them at the museum level. And that is very valuable. Certainly commissions need to be more numerous. We need to make sure that artists never forget they don't only have to show with a gallery, they can also seek commissions from individuals who are redecorating or doing something new with a new property. Absolutely respectable. Goes right back to the Renaissance. That's what the popes did. There's no shame in that at all. Help the public master a vocabulary. Just give them a basic glossary, somehow, of the terms that we use at the Academy. Like, help them speak our language without being all snobby about it. It's totally possible. Experiences. Obviously, going into a gallery or an academy is an exciting thing for a non-artist. They don't know that world, and we can sort of welcome them in a friendly way with not just glasses of wine, but also with talks or demos that show them what we do and make it an experience they will not forget. Tell the museums that do good work in this area, we love them. They don't hear from us enough. When, a museum in Connecticut is showing something great, write a note to the director and say, I just want to tell you how much I enjoyed that show. Because they will make a note of that they want to be supported when they take a chance on one of our artists. If you can, find a celebrity who loves what we do. Pierce Brosnan is an example. He loves this stuff. He paints. Fine. In every region, there's going to be someone like that who can be a spokesperson in a very non-threatening, non-commercial way. Connect with the plein air people. The landscape people are our friends. We need to talk to them more. There's a whole booming world of landscape painting. We do some of it here, but we also need to realize there's a whole world out there who don't want to know how to draw a figure, but love to paint the landscape. That's okay. Let's be connected with them. Tell younger people that these academies and ateliers exist. They will listen. They don't have to go to the university and study at great expense on a curriculum that may not teach them any skills. I'm in awe of illustrators because they're the ones who know how to do it from day one, because they have to go into a job market where they are expected to deliver on day one. That is something very powerful, and the ateliers and academies are preparing people for that kind of work, not just to make art that is, for pleasure. Fairs. Fairs are a little bit vulnerable right now in the pandemic. We don't know if they're going to survive in great numbers, but there will be something like fairs going on in your region even afterward. They can highlight our work because a lot of strangers come through fairs who wouldn't go into an art gallery. Get into auctions, but be careful to make sure that your prices don't go down as a result. Keep an eye on local auctions and see if your work can be placed there. This is so interesting. All these different parallel universes of Western art, fantasy art, gaming art, they're doing good work. Now, not all of it is to your taste, but look at their websites and see which aspects might be borrowable in terms of exhibitions or competitions. There's all quality in these areas. There's also a lot of junk. I would love to see a national touring exhibition in our museums of what you do. That would be exciting. And I think that we have to keep working on that and try to find a museum or two of real importance, like the Wadsworth or the Boston MFA, that would take this on and begin touring such a show, because I think it would be very popular. I think people would come out of the woodwork. Or create a fair that is also selling your work, something that is a pop-up maybe in downtown Hartford or Springfield or wherever. This is the final slide, short-term action plan. Stay positive, don't get discouraged, attend events in our field to show support for the colleagues you admire. You enjoy them, you want to prove that they have traction, you want the host of the event to see that there's a real community behind this art. Bring your friends and family, because they're going to like it too, chances are. Buy the art if you can. Encourage others to buy good art. It's always easier to spend someone else's money. And keep in touch with me, because I would love to hear your stories. I really would. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.